Right, so we're going to work on Mark II today of the sort of glowing eyes Skeletor that I've previously done a video of. My friend and fellow toy collector Uncle He-Man asked if I could create him a glowing eyes Skeletor like this one here. I'll just switch his eyes on for you so you can see his eyes glowing. There you go. So I thought I would do a second video showing the sort of slight changes I've made over this first, which we'll call Mark I Skeletor. Uncle He-Man has requested a battle armor Skeletor, so I picked up a battle armor Skeletor off eBay fairly cheaply. This one actually still has the working armor, which is quite good in the front. And first thing to do is remove his head, which I've done here. I'm going to use the same lights that I previously used, which are these finger lights that I picked up in a shop nearby. They're only £1 and they seem to work pretty well, and they give you 3 different colours of LED, so I can use the red LED from the red finger light and the blue casing to sort of match the colour of Skeletor, as you can see on Mark I here. The only main difference I'm going to try on this one is I no longer have any of the missiles that I used to create this sort of the red part of the eye, so I've picked up a cheap Darth Maul from episode 1. This only cost a couple of £. It's not actually the figure I'm going to use, but the lightsaber is a double-ended lightsaber in this figure, so I'm going to cut off both ends of the saber and use those to create the light sort of eye parts for this figure. So let's chop up this lightsaber and see how it all looks. So this is the first test using the new lightsaber ends instead of the missiles that I'd previously used in the first video. What I've done is I've cut about 1 centimetre off the end of Darth Maul's lightsaber, because you really want the rounded tip part. I'm sure I could buy plastic like this fairly easily, but it doesn't have the nice rounded end. The lightsabers, as you can see, I've done his right eye here. It gives a nice sort of rounded finish, so it still looks like it should be part of the head. So let's just try this. I've got the batteries here, put it in there, and there you go. It lights up just as well as the missiles did. It's a fairly straightforward job sticking the lightsaber into the eye socket. I've pierced a hole through just using a screwdriver, and you can fairly easily push the tip of the lightsaber in there. It takes a little bit of practice just to get it in the right depth. I don't want to push it in too far, and I don't want to leave it out too far, so just takes a little practice there. But that seems to work quite nicely. I'll do that again just to show you. So I'm now going to cut the other end of the lightsaber tip off and stick that into his other eye, and that should be sorted for getting the glowing effect working. I've now got both eyes in place. Fairly simple job again. Just double check that these actually still work and look good. There you go. That does look pretty nice. Both eyes are glowing. I had bought a new LED keyring, which I was hoping to use to construct the sort of backpack part out of, but actually it turns out that this is not particularly good. It's such a simple construction that when you take the LED out, there's not much left of the switch that you can use, so I'm not going to be able to use that to sort of make the battery pack on his back. So instead I'm going to use the same one I did last time, which is the blue version of the finger lights that I've bought. As you can see here, if I switch it on, it's the blue one. The blue matches quite nicely with Skeletor's colour, so I'm just going to take this one apart and rebuild it with some wire instead of the LED, and that should be good enough and should work quite nicely. First up, need to glue in place this small battery tag, as it keeps falling out of the back, and it's much easier if it doesn't move. There's no reason why it isn't glued in. I guess it's just this is such a cheap little toy that they cut corners everywhere they can. So first up, let's glue this in place. This is just a bit of contact adhesive here, so I'll put a little bit on there and use some tweezers just to get that bang in the right position on the back. Next up, I need to recreate the sort of switch mechanism that's in this little light. Because this is a sort of simple thing, it just uses the pegs, the legs of the LED to create the connections. There's a switch that pushes a metal bar down onto one of the legs, and the other leg touches the other side of the batteries. But because I'm obviously removing the LED and sticking that inside Skeletor's head, I need to recreate what the two legs do, and I'm going to do that by just using a piece of cable and sort of carefully soldering one side to be a long replacement leg to go in there, and then I will use the other side to recreate the end battery contacts that go on the other side of the batteries at the back. It should be fairly straightforward to do, just requires a little bit of sort of fancy soldering, so I'll get on and make that now. So here you can see I've soldered the first piece of wire so that it's a long, sort of thin, straight piece to replace the first leg of the LED. So if I put the little switch piece in place, which is this here, more fiddly than you can imagine, you can now see that if I switch this forwards, it pushes the little touch plate onto the bit of soldered cable that I've got in place. Actually looks like the solder cable is just slightly too high, but I can easily move that with my tweezers just to get it in place. There you go, that's better. So now the switch, when it switches, touches the first leg. So now I just need to recreate the other connection using this bit of cable here. That there are 3 batteries that go in a line there, so I just need to make a bit of cable that touches the other terminal of those batteries, and that should work fine. So for the battery connector piece, I've cut a sort of fairly longish piece of the cable here, and I've twisted it and turned it into a sort of loop. I'm now going to try and solder on top of that loop and make a sort of solid piece of solder. It should be fairly straightforward to do this. So get a nice lot of solder on the soldering iron, then I can just keep putting solder until I get a good enough loop there. We go, that's looking pretty good. Right, so I've now got a nice, pretty good sort of flat plate of solder there, which will be good enough now to sort of sit and be the second battery connector on the inside of that little package. So that should work pretty nicely. I've now glued the 2 bits of wire in place that I have just soldered. As this is a fairly fiddly little case, it's better to glue them so that they don't move around too much, and I'll have to leave this for sort of half an hour while it sets. You can sort of see what's done there, but I've essentially replaced the 2 legs of the LED, which I've removed from the casing, with 2 bits of soldered wire, and the end result should be that it will still work just the same as it did when the LED was in the case. So just let that dry, and we'll carry on later. Right, so here is the finished sort of reconstruction of the battery box. All my wiring and stuff is now glued and in place, and just to quickly check that this works, I will switch it on like so and touch it to the 2 terminals on the Skeletor head that I've already got here, other way around, and as you can see it all lights up, so that means the battery and my wiring is all working perfectly. If I switch this off, should not work, which it doesn't, which is great. So now all I need to do is attach this to the back of the figure. I've already drilled a hole in the back of this battle armor Skeletor, so I'm going to thread the cables through, make sure they're nice and short so it only just sort of hangs on his back, and then solder them onto the LED that's inside this Skeletor's head, and then that's pretty much it. I've just got a bit of heat shrink that I put on the wire before I soldered the LED on, just to smooth over the joints. Just stops, should stop the LED sort of shorting out if these wires ever do touch together, which is pretty unlikely once they're inside the head, but it's always better to be safe than sorry on this. So there's just a little bit of heat shrink. You have to be quite quick with this, otherwise you could end up burning the plastic. There we go, job done. So now one final quick test. If I just switch the backpack on, there you can see the LED is lighting up. So now all I need to do is reattach the head and that's the custom Skeletor eyes done for a second time. Only a few changes from my original design, but it should work just as well. And here we have the final custom Skeletor eyes Battlematic version. If I switch his eyes on there, you can see they glow quite nicely. Unfortunately, adding all the cabling inside the head has meant that the Battlematic action gets a little bit stuck. There seem to be some ridges on the top of it which get caught on the wires that I've put inside. At some point I'll take this apart, I think, and maybe see if I can carve away some of the bits of the Battlematic action, see if that fixes it. But this is a little bit more of an awkward figure than a basic Skeletor, as there's much more that goes on inside it. The basic Skeletor is a very easy job to do because there's nothing inside it that can that the cables get caught on. But as you can see, the end result is pretty nice. I'll just switch off my desk lamp here so you can see the eyes glowing a bit better. Another sort of simple modification, but it does look pretty good, and this will sit quite nicely along with the original He-Man that I did. This is actually a present for my friend Uncle He-Man, so this one's going to go in the post to him for his birthday, but I'll probably make myself another one when I get the parts in next time. Anyway, thanks for watching.